In this presentation, we're going to record deposits from customers. In other words, we've recorded invoices in the past, received payments on those invoices, as well as received payments for sales that happen within the store that we're imagining in our practice problem now. Now we put that information into a holding account, which we're now going to transfer it out of that holding account into the actual checking account so it matches up in the same grouping in the checking account as will be seen on the bank statement. Time to rise above the crowd with Sage 50 Cloud Accounting. Here we are in our Get Great Guitars company file. I'm going to go on up to the customer and sales information. And last time we had been entering our invoices, and then we received payments on those invoices, as well as having payments that we're imagining were received directly from the point of sale in the store, which was also using this receive payment form. Now, when we put those receive payments in place, we put them not into the actual checking account, but into the holding account, so that we can then put them or transfer the money into the checking account as we actually go to the bank. So we're talking about cash on hand at this point in time, not yet in the bank, and then we're going to physically move it from one account to the next, or we're going to physically put it into the bank, and then we'll go into our system and move it or transfer it from the one checking account to the other. The goal of that, or the one holding account, cash account, to the actual checking account, the goal of that being that it will now show up on our statement, our system, in the same format as the bank statement, and therefore we'll be able to match it out. Now, we might actually look at a different kind of system you can use for a similar process with this form down here, the bank deposit information, in a future presentation. We touched on it in prior presentations when we went over just the way these the flowchart works. So you can go back and look at that system for another look at a way that you can do this, group this information together with the use of this function. So first, let's take a look at the financial statements. I'm going to go to the reports drop down. We're going to go on down to our financial statements, and all we need this time is the balance sheet. So let's open the balance sheet up, because that's what we need. And then I'm going to select the drop down. We're going to take the range. We want it for January, and there we have it. So all we're going to do is we're going to make some transfers now from the cash on hand, and we're going to go to the checking account. So we're imagining we're going to the bank at the end of the day and just depositing everything that we have on hand into the bank, and therefore it's going to be grouped in that kind of format as we go to the bank. Now, because this is a practice problem, we did a lot of depositing into the cash on hand. We would typically think that whenever at the end of the day, we'd probably want to go to the bank and make the deposit into the bank. But we wanted to put in our practice problem the transactions of a like kind together. So now we're going to make a few different deposits to kind of break these deposits out, and a few different transfers that'll group these payments from the cash on hand to the checking account. So let's do that. I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to close this. And to do that, I'll go down to the banking side of things. Let's go to the banking side of things. A couple different ways we can do this. I'm going to do this with the register. So I'm just going to go to the register, and I like to use the register. I'm going to use the register for the cash on hand account. So that means I'm in the cash on hand account, and I'm going to be transferring to the checking account. And that way it's going to be easy for me to see. If you use the cash on hand account, in other words, just simply for this process, for a holding account, then it's kind of like a clearing account. It's going to be zero at the beginning. Then you're going to transfer the money to the checking account, or then you're going to increase it with the receipts and of invoices and receive payment forms. Then you're going to take it to the bank, and it'll be back down to zero. And that also is a way that you can kind of match this out. You can kind of tie out in this format to be able to see the deposits and then the payments, and kind of match them out and see how they're kind of grouped together in this format. All right, so we're going to make the deposit as of 01/23/20. This is going to be a payment because it's going to be coming out of the payment, so it's a payment for the cash on hand account. I'm going to call it a transfer, so we'll call it a transfer here. And then the payee, I'm going to leave blank for now. They might force me to put a payee, but I'm going to leave it blank for now. The GL account, I'm going to put this into the checking account, so it's going to be now going into the checking account. And then the memo, we could put transfer. And then it's going to be a payment of, and I'm going to be combining these two amounts, the 8,000 and the 438. So again, we're kind of imagining we're going back in time, and we are depositing these things as we go. So I'm going to group them together in a few different ways. Obviously, in practice, we would do this every day, and whatever we had on hand, we would take to the bank and deposit in that format. Also note you might have some variation with the deposit, like if you have checks that you needed to deposit together versus cash, or different types of payments that might require different bundling of the deposits. So I'm going to say that this is going to be 8438, 8438. And also just note that in the memo here, you may want to reference the deposits. So that's one use you could have for the memo. You could reference the deposits, and that might help you with the grouping of them. So it's just an option you can have. And then I'm going to go ahead and say save, and it's going to say you must enter a payee. So I knew it was going to ask for a payee. So back to the payee. I'm just going to put transfer for the payee since it's going from one account to the other account. And then I'm going to say tab and see if it allows me to do that. I'm going to say save now. You're about to save the transaction. I'm going to say yes, please. And there we have it. So now let's close this back out. I'm just going to minimize it because we'll probably be back here later. And then I'm going to go back in to this one, into our balance sheet. So let's go into our balance sheet. We want to make sure it is refreshed. I believe mine is already, but you want to check that out. And then in the cash on hand, it should have been removed from the cash on hand. There it is. If we double click on it, it takes us right back to the transaction we have made. And closing this back out, the other side then, of course, going into the checking account. If we double click on that checking account, then we see the other side, the 8438 there. So we close that last screen out. We're back to the balance sheet. So in the balance sheet, now we're going to do the same process. We're just going to batch the rest of it up now. So I'm going to make another deposit for the amount that's still in the cash on hand, the $13,192, and we're going to transfer that into the checking account. Same process over here. So we're going to go back to our input screen. We're in the banking section. We're going to be opening up that old register again. So I'm going to go to the account register. And there is our account register. I'm on the cash on hand account. So it's going to be coming out of this account, going into the checking account. We're going to make this as of 013020 this time. It's going to be a payment. It's going to be a transfer. And then I'm going to make this 1020 because that's the checking account. It's going to go into that checking account once again. And then on the memo, you may want to reference the accounts that are going to be applied up here, which is going to be everything except the 8,000 and the 438. So it's the 7,500, the 5,000, the 8,000, and I think that is it. So you could reference those. I'm not going to do that here. I'm just going to say transfer, and then I'm going to say that this is going to be a payment, and it adds up to that 13192 because that's what's left in the cash on hand, as we can see here, and that's going to transfer all of it. So we're taking all of it out and putting it into the checking account, and this would typically be known, again, if it was the end of the night, then obviously it would be matching out whatever happened during that day we would take, and we would be putting that and transferring it to the checking account at the end of the night. All right, so let's go ahead and say save on that. We're going to save that one, and we'll say yes, please. That reference number has already been cash account. I'm going to say okay, and that's fine. And then I'm going to go back to our balance sheet, see what happens over here. And note what happened is there was a disappearing, as you saw, if you were watching closely, if you're paying attention, you saw a disappearing of the cash on hand account because it's at 0 now and it's no longer being displayed. If we wanted to see it, just note it's a nice kind of option up here. You could say, I'd like to show the 0 amounts, right? And then I can go okay. And that might be useful so that you can then zoom in on it. Then I can use my zoom feature. So when you're auditing, you may want that, you may want to be aware of that. And then you can go and you can zoom back into the source document to see that. Closing that back out. The other side, of course, is in the checking account. So if we go into that checking account, we will then see the other side of that 13,192. So that's going to be it for now. Let's get out of here.